The greatest dilemma in man. Today is April the 25th, 2021. I've decided to speak because I want to address some things in life. Hopefully, it'll be a blessing. The greatest dilemma in man is his lack of image. We'll talk about that in a moment. The greatest tragedy of man is the lack of or failure to identify one's purpose. That's the greatest tragedy. Not to have life, but have life without purpose. Miles Monroe say it's worse than death. And the greatest dilemma or crisis is the lack of identity. Not not police shootings. Well, let me put it more in context. Not a white police officer shooting a black male or female. That's not the greatest dilemma. Uh, the greatest dilemma, I'm just going to speak more specifically, is the lack of or the state of our identity being stolen. What is identity? Our identity is what Genesis talks about, the book of beginnings. If you want to understand the end of a thing, you've got to look at its beginning. The beginning, the book of Genesis, begins to describe the state of mankind. I believe it's in the first chapter in 24 through 26 talks about that God made man in his own image and his likeness. In the image of God made he him, male and female created he them. We were created in the image. Those are two different words, two distinct words, in his image and his likeness. We lost our image by one act and one act only. And it only takes one act. You know that life can change with one simple decision. We are products of our decisions. And so the decision to act upon um, the commandment of God was detrimental, life changing. From that time on, you and I have been the recipients of that act of disobedience. But the good news is that the Bible says, I believe in the book of Romans, by one man's disobedience, many were made sinners. So then, by the obedience of one, many shall be made righteous. So, again, I'm kind of going off because I have much to say. I wanted to talk about greatest dilemma, the greatest dilemma, and that's our lack of identity. Not you notice, um, I said it's not police shootings because um, you, today I can only imagine how many lives are going to be destroyed by a senseless act of violence. I can't. I don't have to imagine. I can just look at statistically of the thousands of lives of children who are going to be slaughtered before they even exit the womb. And you may say, well, that's a woman's choice. Well, that's a debate for another matter or discussion for another matter. I can only statistically see the, the thousands of lives or hundreds of lives that are going to be slaughtered, not by the hands of some policeman who happens to be Caucasian, but in the hands of another man who looks just like me, who looks black like me, or another woman who looks black like me. And it won't, unless they have a specific agenda in mind, it will not make the national news. It won't make it. Again, you have to understand, we are in these last days. The Bible says that in the last days, people would, I think it's 2 Timothy, the third chapter, 7th verse, people would be ever learning. Ever learning. Look at the internet. We have much information, ever learning, and never able to come to the knowledge of the truth. Of the truth. Not your truth, not my truth, but a truth. There is no such thing as your truth or my truth. It's the truth. sun rises in the day, sets at the night. That's the truth. People die. That's the truth. Um, there is no such thing. The only one who wants to make it my truth or your truth are those who want to deceive you or deceive me. Ever learning and never able to come to the knowledge of the truth. And that's why Hosea 4 and 6 says, my people are destroyed because of a lack of knowledge, not information. Knowledge is not information. Information is information. Knowledge in this sense of what the Bible talks about is the acquisition not of education, but the revelation of God's holy word and getting an understanding of it. So what am I saying? Identity. Driving it. And you see those familiar red and blue lights. You know what time it is. And you, like me, myself, possibly have been maybe a little bit anxious or even a little bit nervous because we were trying to figure out whether or not we have our insurance paid or whether or not we are driving. Hopefully we're not, as that song say, I don't know about it. I heard the kids sing, no, hopefully not driving dirty. Hopefully we have everything intact. And nowadays, being pulled over becomes an act of emotional hostility. Why did you pull me over? I'm not. Why did you single me out of all these cars? You pull me over. What's going on in the mind? The first thing that officer, he or she, black or white or otherwise, will come to the car, right or left side. Now it's on the right side. Now they want to see your what you got. They want to see your ID. They want to know who you are. They want to know whether or not you have validity, whether or not you have whether or not you have the right, or you have paid for the right to be able to drive on the streets that tax dollars are paying for. That's what this is about. And so they're going to ask for your driver's license. They're going to ask for your registration. Again, whether or not you have went through the process. Again, it's about process, and I want to talk about that. Stay tuned. Of going through the time to be valid. It's not about being black. It's not about being whatever. Oh yeah, I'm not ignorant. I recognize that there's profiling. If they tell you there's not profiling, they're lying because they profile. But by the same token, if you are driving in the right, I'll confess. The Bible says confess your faults one to another and pray for one another that you may be healed. Oh, I'm confessing. I was riding in my vehicle for a while, and I needed to get my tags, and I didn't have the funds to get it at the time because it was going to be costly to get the repairs I needed in order to pass emissions. Costly for me, anyway. So I was riding dirty, and all the while I'm riding, I'm always thinking, or I'm sort of in the back of my mind, what if I'm pulled over? I know I know I'm not riding legal. So always in the back of my mind, I'm thinking that, man, this could not be a good situation. I could get fined. I could get this. I could get that. When I finally got my tags and I got my sticker, I have peace of mind because now I'm legal. I don't have to worry. I don't have to worry. So I want to just conclude this. When one doesn't know who he or she is, one's identity becomes a factor. And the greatest detriment is not what we hear on the news or the nightly news or not what you hear tonight, tomorrow. The greatest detriment is our lack of identity. We simply don't know who we are. Why does a person act in such a matter? Because they have no identity. Why do they rebel in such a way? Because normally they don't have the identity, or their identity has been stolen. What do I mean by that? When you have a knowledge of who you are, like let's say I have now my identity restored. I'm driving. I've got my identity restored. When the cop pulls me over, I have no fear. Does that make sense? That's a small illustration. I have no fear. And even if you don't have fear when you pull over, at the minute that he or she exposes your lack of having validity, then we react. Cop pulls me over, I have no fear. Why? I have nothing in my record. I have nothing to fear. And that's one of the strongholds of knowing who you are. I'm going to talk about this in length. I want you to stay in tune because the greatest crisis or dilemma is not, it's not that. One of the greatest crises is our identity. Our greatest deficit is our lack of image. And our greatest hope, our greatest need for restoration, the greatest tragedy is life without a purpose. It's those three things. Our image was stolen, or our image was, we forsook our image in the garden, the image of God. When we disobeyed, when Adam disobeyed God, his image died. That's what died. The image is the righteousness, the holiness, the love of God, his God awareness of who God is died. And then he became self-aware, but I'll save that for another time. God bless you.